Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's assignment video. This is where I'm going to go through assignment number 2 here, and go over the exact walkthrough of the solution for the assignment. Okay, so hopefully, if you haven't yet completed assignment 2, then please do so first before you watch this video, because a bunch of spoilers here, right? So just download it from howtoprogramwithjava.com / Java-practice-assignment-2. I'm sure you can read that. So yeah, fire yourself over there. You can download the actual practice assignment here from this link, and to actually install the assignment, if you like, you can go to Java Practice Assignment 1. And I actually have a video there that explains how you can install the actual assignment. So video explanation on how to import the assignment. Okay, you'll just be able to follow those instructions. They should be identical for assignment 2. So having said that, let's go over what the requirements were. The goal of the assignment was to teach you about object classes and interfaces and abstract classes. So, okay, here's the explanation as well of how you can go about importing the Java library files. So, that's good stuff. Now, the requirements here are to create the objects that use inheritance in such a way that I think it's the employee extends the person or implements the person interface, and the organization has the actual specific organization implements the organization object. Okay, so a couple of things going on there. So let me go through the actual solution because I'm sure you're familiar with the assignment. So what we have here is an abstract class of person, and we have an employee which should probably do something with person. We have an organization, which is an interface, and we have some other objects that most likely will need to implement the interface for organization. And then we have some unit tests that right now are failing because we need to actually implement some code which we have not yet implemented. So let me get started. First, I'll begin with the person class. And I see that, like I said, it's an abstract class, which means that we can have a mixture of both methods that have a body inside of them. Okay, and what I mean by that is there's a method here, a toString method, that actually has some code implemented inside of it. But then we also have some abstract methods which do not have any body. Okay, so what I mean again, there's no body, which means there's no curly brackets with code inside of it. And you see that when I do this, when I actually have the brackets here, it complains and says the abstract methods do not specify a body. Or perhaps a more appropriate terminology there should be abstract methods should not specify a body. So I will restore that how it should be. Okay, so what that means is we have an abstract class of person with abstract methods, which means we should probably be actually implementing those abstract methods. Okay, so you think about the relationships with objects. Okay, you think of the is-a relationship. Okay, so that's what inheritance is all about, the is-a relationship. So what works here? Would you say a person is an employee or an employee is a person? Well, the way you think of it again is in terms of all objects. So are all employees considered a person or people? Yes, I would say that every employee should be considered and is considered a person. And vice versa, would every person be considered an employee? No, not every person on this planet is an employee. So there you go. You now know the direction of the is-a relationship. So an employee is a person. So if an employee is a person, the employee should implement or extend the person class. Now, since the person class is not an interface, we will be using the extends keyword. Okay, extends goes along with regular classes or abstract classes. So we have employee extends person, and now you see that employee is upset. It says we have we need to implement the inherited abstract methods. Okay, so I just say add unimplemented methods, and voila, we have all the methods that we need to implement. Right now, all they do is they return null, so that's not exactly helpful. So what do I have here? I have getters, so get name, get sex, get set name, set sex, set birthday, get birthday. So getters and setters. So when you see getters and setters, you should immediately think of instance variables, okay? And this is part of something called encapsulation, which is another big, part of object-oriented programming. So let me create some private instance variables. So let's create the name first. So I see that name is looking for a string, okay? So when I get name, I should be returning a string. So I think it's safe to say that the name instance variable should be a string data type. And I will name my variable name. So I'm going to go through and do this for all of the properties here, all of the variables. So this should be a string because it's returning a string, and birthday returns a date. Okay, did you see that down there? Get birthday returns a date, so this property should be a date variable type, and we have, was it birthday or birth date? Birthday. Okay, it's important to match up the name of the instance variable with the get method that it represents, or that represents it. Okay, so you see how we have name with lowercase, and here it's get with name uppercase. So this is exactly the method that we use. This is sort of the pattern that we follow. Don't create the variable with a capital N, because although that might work right now, again, it's not standard. And when we get further along, when we start talking about things like model view controller, which is part of web application development, everything falls apart. So make sure that you use a lowercase letter when you are dealing with your property names. Now, if I were to have a variable that's called, name of person or something like that, that's when we can get into capitalization. That's when we use something called camel case, which is just making the first letter of the next word capital. Okay, so this is the proper way of creating a name of person variable. But you see how this now does not match up with our get and actually our set methods as well. Let me move this up so that they're together. So you see how these don't match up. Get name, and we have name of person. If these were to match up, then I would need to say get name of person, okay, and set name of person, okay. Then they match up. But now employee is upset because we're not implementing a get name and set name method. So that's just for the purposes of illustration. So I will now delete the of person, and the of person, and the of person, and we should be good to go. All right. So now we still have some warnings here. Even though we've added our instance variables, it's still upset. And it's saying that the employee name is not used, and birthday is not used. Well, that's because these getters and setters aren't doing anything. Okay, so a getter should just return the value of the instance variable. Okay, like so. That's it. Piece of cake. Next, we need to do the setter. Now, the setter is a little bit more complicated because we need to use a keyword, and I'll explain why. So, the whole point of a setter is to change the private instance variable inside of an object. Okay, so this variable is private. Name is private. So what does that mean? That means that if I'm in another class like Microsoft, I can't, let me just quickly create a void method like test, just for the sake of creating one. If I created an employee object, okay, an employee E equals new employee, Okay, and I wanted to access the name variable. Okay, I want to access the name property. I say dot, and I would type in name, but you see I'm not allowed to do it. I don't have access to it because it's private. Okay, if this was made public, and save that, then if I go back and say dot and say name, there it is. Name shows up in my auto suggest or whatever when I click control space. So that's because it's public. I'm allowed to look at it. I'm allowed to see it. Okay, but that's not the case. I want it to be private, and again, that's part of something called encapsulation. And the reason for that is I don't want anyone directly messing around with the name variable. Okay, I don't want someone to say, an employee.name equals, something else. I don't want someone to be able to do that directly. Okay, I want to force them to go through a set method. Okay, so that's exactly what we're doing here. We're saying private string name. We're not allowing them to directly modify the name variable. We're forcing them to go through a set method. Okay, you'll see the set is public. So what they can do here is they can say an employee.setName, and then you would pass something else into the parameter area. Okay, so that is valid. And you might say, well, what the heck is the difference? Why am I exposing a set name method as opposed to just allowing them to change the name variable directly? Well, again, that's something called encapsulation, and it's a method of protecting your data. And I'll show you a good example of why this is useful. Let's say we want to do some validation on our data. Let's say we don't want someone to set a name that is invalid. Like, let's say we say if name is equal to just a blank character, or the name, actually I should do it the other way around. If the name is null, or it's a blank character, then maybe we should do something. Maybe we should say, maybe we should just return and do nothing. Maybe we don't change the name of our person. Or maybe we do something like, throw new illegal argument exception or something like that, and you say, this is not a valid name. Okay, so there's a couple of different things that we can do here to decide how we want to deal with an invalid attempt to set our variable to something else. Okay, so let's say we do this for now, and then if everything else is okay, all right, we can do an else, and we can say, since then I can assume that the name coming in is valid, then I need to set the name of the instance variable equal to the name that we've passed in. Now, how do I do this? Because they both have the variable name. So, can I just say name equals name? Well, no, it's going to say, what are you doing? You're just assigning the same thing to itself, and nothing's really going to happen. Okay? And that's because of scoping. Okay? So inside of the scope of this method, okay, so the scope being from the curly brace here to the curly brace there, the variable name is referring to this variable that we're passing in. So if I type in name, it means this name that I'm passing in. Well, then how the heck do I refer to this name? How is that possible? If I type in name and it refers to this one, I want it to refer to that one. Well, that's where this new or different keyword comes in, and that's this. Okay? So when I say this, that is referring to the employee object that is actually instantiated and being used at any given moment. Okay? So, for example, I've instantiated this employee object. Okay? And then when I say an employee here, it's actually referring to the instance, the actual created employee, the unique employee that I've created, and it's referring to that. So when I say set name and pass in a name for the person, which I guess something else doesn't really make sense for a name. It should probably be something like Trevor Page. Then, where'd I go? Then in here, the this refers to the actual employee, which is this employee. Okay, so you see how that works? It's going to invoke the setter method, and it's going to go into the setter. It's going to have something that we've passed in, which is Trevor Page, which I just typed in, and then it's going to set the name of this employee, which in the context of where we are right now, the this actually refers to this employee that we've created, okay? And it's going to set the variable, the instance variable for the employee equal to what we've passed in, okay? And then once the code flows out and terminates, what'll happen is this actual variable that we passed in just gets thrown away because now we're outside of the scope of this method, so it gets thrown away. But this one remains because it's still part of the object, so that won't ever be thrown away unless we actually throw away the entire object. Okay? So that's kind of a long-winded explanation as to why we use setter methods and really getter methods, and why we have this thing called encapsulation. All right? So now let me go ahead and finish off and do the same thing for everything else. So here we want to return the sex of the person. And again, you can type in this here if you really want to, but it's not actually necessary because there's no conflicting variable name. Okay, and you know, you can actually change this too. You could change the variable name here to say, you know, passed in name or something like that. And if we did that, then we wouldn't need the this keyword. You see now everything's okay. There's no underlining. There's no anything going on. But it's just it's one of those standard practice things that happen in Java, that it just uses the same name of the variable, so we know that this name is supposed to be for this name here. It's just standard operating procedure. Okay, so if you think it's silly, fair enough, because I think it's a little silly myself, but you're not going to get very far because that's just how it's done in the working world, and that's how it's done in the open source community, and that's how it's done, you know, pretty much everywhere. So you just kind of have to bite the bullet and go with the flow. So let me finish off. So again, I don't have to say this here because there's no conflicting variable name. And here I have to say this dot sex equals sex, and again I can do some sort of checking here to see if this is a valid argument. And again, for illustration purposes, I don't know if you would do this in the real world, but I'm going to do this for the sake of illustrating what you can do with these setter methods. So I'm going to say male or female Okay, so you see what I've done there? I have a verifying thing that says if the sex is male or female, then we're good. Set it to be in the object itself. If it's anything other than those two, then we're going to throw an illegal argument exception. Now, again, you wouldn't necessarily do something like this in the real world. This would probably be something that you would set up at the database level. It would make more sense to have it at the database level, but because we don't have a database here, perhaps it makes sense to put it here. Also, I would probably, instead of using equals, I would probably use equals ignore case, which means that I don't care if what's coming in here, what's being passed in, is typed in like male or male capital or male with a lowercase e or male, like, you know what I mean? It doesn't care that way. If it's any one of those things, then it'll be okay. Whereas if I just use equals and someone were to pass in female with a capital F, this would actually be false. Okay, it's actually case sensitive, and then I would get that's not a valid sex. So that's not exactly something that I want to have happen. So I will use equals ignore case. All right, cool. And let's do the same setter for birthday. So this dot birthday equals birthday. Oh, see, I've called it birth date here, so I actually wouldn't need the this. So that's actually a little mishap from what I did. My apologies. This should probably say birthday, but that's all right. For the sake of argument, let's just leave it as it is. And should we do any sort of validation? Yeah, let's say if birth date is null, then I'll say throw new legal argument exception. This is not a valid birthday. Sure, why not? Okay, and if I want to, I could put this in an else. If I really wanted to, I could actually not have it in an else because when you throw an exception, it'll actually immediately exit out of the method that you're in. But whatever, I'll put an else in. And finally, get birthday, return birthday. There we go. So for some of you, that might have been painful to listen to because this is just a simple Java, plain old Java object with the properties in it. So I apologize if I've been going too slow for you, but for all the other people who have never really seen this or done this before, this is sort of something that no one really ever walked me through, okay? And it's just something that I had to pick up on my own, and I really would have appreciated it if someone had really gone into depth and explained this concept, because this concept is used very often, all right? So there we go. So now let me go to my Microsoft. Let me get rid of this little blurb here because it doesn't make sense for that to exist inside of the Microsoft class. And let me go to my tests. Well, I would like to run these tests to see if we're good to go, but I see that I have some compilation errors, okay? So I need to have, apparently there's a set job title and a set organization that should exist on the employee, okay? Now, that is the reason why. Normally I would say, okay, then that should be part of the person abstract class. We should have defined some abstract methods called set job title and set organization. However, would that really make sense? Would it make sense to have set job title for the person class? Okay, and this is something that goes back to object-oriented programming and good programming design. Okay, every person has a name. That's true. Every person has a sex. That's true. Every person has a birthday. That's true. Does every person in the entire planet have a job title? No. Or an organization that they work for? No. So that's the reason why they were not included in the person class. What makes more sense is for these set job title and set organization to appear as part of the employee class. Okay? So we're getting down to the more specific class of employee, so that's where job title and organization actually makes sense. Okay? So, because hopefully if you're an employee, you have a job title, and hopefully if you're an employee, you're actually working for some kind of organization. So, let's do that. Let's implement set job title and set organization. So, same thing, I would need a instance variable here, and it wants, oops, I just closed it, tests. They both take, this one takes a string, so job title takes a string here, so we will use that to say, okay, string job title. Okay, notice that, let me move this over here, job title. Notice that I used a capital T here. Okay, so there's two words, job title, so title gets a T, capitalized. Very important. And where's my other one? Organization. Now, organization, you see, what does it take as a parameter? Well, right now it looks like it takes Google as a parameter. But there's also a set organization that takes Microsoft as a parameter. So what do I do here? I can't say private Google organization, right? I could say that, and then things would work out for, 1, 2, 3 of my test cases, but then this one would fail. Okay, so let me actually go through and implement the getters and setters for this. By the way, a really quick way to implement getters and setters: right click, go to, I think it's refactor, or is it source? I always use the shortcut key. I think it's source. And you can say generate getters and setters, okay? And then I can just click, generate a getter and setter for job title and for organization. Okay, you can actually expand them out and choose, like maybe you don't want to get, or maybe you don't want to set and you want gets, you know what I mean? You can customize. But I'll choose both and say okay, and then boom, it goes and just generates the getters and setters automatically for me. So now when I save that, I go here, and well, it's still, let me close this and reload it. Maybe it's just upset with me. No, it's not happy. It's saying the constructor Google string is undefined. Okay, well, that's because I probably haven't implemented my Google logic yet. Let me think. Do I want to go off on a tangent? No, I don't. So let me explain what to do here. Let's assume that this code was compiling correctly. What you would see is all 3 of these would be correct, but this one would not be correct. Okay, it would say something like, actually, this is exactly what we're seeing. See the set organization? There's no red underline, no red underline, no red underline, but then boom, we have a red underline here. When we look at it, we see that the method set organization Google in the type employee is not applicable for the arguments Microsoft. So what that's saying is, in the employee type, okay, the set organization is expecting a Google organization. Okay, and that you can see with the set organization, it's expecting Google. Okay, and that's because we declared it as Google. Okay, so it's not happy. We're trying to pass in Microsoft, and Google and Microsoft apparently don't play well together. So we need to figure out what to do here to make all of these compile correctly. Well, the solution is look at Google and Microsoft. Okay, they should both, looks like they're both organizations. So what if we were to put in, instead of Google, let's be more generic. Okay, this is called programming to an interface. Let's say that they should take an organization. Okay, and then it probably needs to import organization. Yes, import it. There we go. And then we need to just modify our getters and setters, because their getters and setters are expecting Google. Okay, they don't automatically change. 2 things you can do. You can either copy paste in the proper ones, or if you don't want to copy paste, you can take the lazy route, which is delete them, and then do your source code, generate getters and setters again, and regenerate the getters and setters for the organization property. So there we go. So now if we flip back, well, now all of them are underlined, but that's for a whole nother reason. So there, we've implemented the getters and setters for the job title and organization, and that now does resolve the problems we were seeing in here before. So that's cool. We are done. We are happy. Again, if you want to, you can go in and you can do some error checking to make sure that job title is valid and organization is valid, but I won't do that right now for the sake of taking up too much time. So next thing I will do is jump to the organization side of things. So right now it's complaining because Google, I'm passing in Google and I'm passing in Microsoft, and it's saying, well, Google and Microsoft are not organizations, so you can't pass them in because we're expecting an organization in our set organization method. Well, why is that? They are organizations. Why is it complaining? Well, it's because here we have an interface, which is organization, but Google and Microsoft are just regular classes. Okay, they're just regular Java objects, and we haven't done anything with them. That's because they actually need to take on the contract or agree to the contract of being an organization. And in order to do that, we have to use the implements keyword, okay? So we say Google implements organization. All right? So that's the key here. And same goes for Microsoft, but I'll do that in a second. So now when Google implements the organization interface, the organization interface has a few things that it says that all classes that implement it have to abide by. Okay, the contract is set up such that they all have to do these things. So Google's not doing it right now, so all I do is add the unimplemented methods. And hey, look at this. Get, 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 get. So I have 4 getters. Number of employees, name of organization. Oh heck, why did I say get? Oh, that was silly of me. My apologies. These should be setters. So let me delete those and add unimplemented methods. Okay, there we go. So now we have getters and setters. So no, there's not 4 different ones. There's 2 different ones, and we should have 2 different properties, instance variables. First one being number of employees, and the number of employees, wants an integer, so this should be an integer. Okay, and again, first letter should never be capitalized. And this one, name of organization, this one should be a string, so I will do private string and lowercase number or letter, the first letter. And I will, instead of returning null, I will actually return the number of employees and name of organization. And the setter should say this dot number of employees equals number of employees, and this dot name equals name. There we go. So in case you're wondering how I was doing that so quickly, I just type in this dot and that comes up automatically, name, and then I say equals and I just type in NAM and hit control space. Control space is your shortcut key for showing the they call them template proposals, but I call it autocomplete, whatever works for you. And then I just hit enter to select that one, and there you go. There, so that's done, that's out of the way. And I also need to do the same thing for Microsoft. Implements organization, organization. Very exciting stuff. I think I'll just copy paste from here. Yeah, because they're both going to do the same thing, so I'll just copy paste. Like so. Okay, so now what's going on? The constructor. Okay, so this is a special constructor. Okay, if I were to take this that string away, then everything would be compiling okay. But I want a constructor here because you know it's a constructor because there's a new keyword and the object is being defined or being instantiated. And I have an argument that I'm passing in, a parameter that I'm passing into the new Google object. And again, when you have new and followed by the name of the object, this is the constructor. So this is looking for a constructor that takes a string as an argument, okay? But when you go to the Google object, there's no constructor defined here. So it's saying that I need to define a constructor that takes a string as an argument, okay? And what is the name? Well, that's the name of the organization. So if I want to be correct here, I should say name of organization. And this is kind of like a setter method. It's very similar to a setter method. It's just that this will be run as soon as the instantiation of the object happens, okay? So when the instantiation of the object happens, it will automatically assign the name of the organization to the object, okay? So it's kind of like you're saying you have no choice but to create the Google object with the name built in as soon as it's created, okay? So the same thing needs to go for Microsoft, so let's copy and paste this in and change Google to be Microsoft. There we go. So now when I save it, everything compiles correctly and we are happy. So we can finally run our unit tests. So let's do that. I'll right click, oh, that's the init. I'll right click on the class itself and say run, and run, and let's see what happens. Alright, so we have failures. So what's the failure? Assertion error. Expected is name, blah 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 blah, but all I got was this. So what's the test? If I double click here, I see that the test says I need to ensure that the toString method is properly coded. So toString is an interesting beast, and it is such because it belongs to the object class, the generic object class. So what we're saying here is that the toString method should be coded properly, in that when I invoke the toString, I should see all of this information. Okay? So look what we're doing here. The employees, what is employees? Well, it looks like it's some sort of, okay, it's a list, and it has people inside of it, a list of person objects. Okay? So I have a list, I'm getting the first one in the list, okay? So it's the first person, and I'm invoking the toString method on the first person. Okay, so what is the first person? Well, I look, my employees is instantiated. I have a before annotation, which means that this init method is like an initialization method. This will be run before every single unit test. Okay, how many unit tests do I have? 2. So how it will run is when I run all the tests, it will run the before method, and then it will run the test. And then it will run the before method, and then it will run the other test. Okay? So when it runs the before method, it creates an employee and adds it to my list. And then it creates another employee, adds it to the list, and creates another employee, adds it to the list, etc. Okay? So what is going on then? We get the first employee and we do a toString and we look at what the toString should be outputting. So what happens? Well, the first employee is going to be Trevor Page, male, with a birthday on, this is actually January 1st, 1983, with the job title of Senior Software Engineer who works at Google. So what's happening? Well, when we invoke the toString method, all we get is name Trevor Page, sex male. What we're expecting is name Trevor Page, sex male, job title Senior Software Engineer, organization Google. So why is that not working? Well, that has everything to do with the fact that let me show you what I did there. You can right click and say open declaration, or you can hit F3. So I want to go into the toString method to see what exactly is happening. So I hit F3, and lo and behold, I'm in the person class, and the person class actually overrides a toString method, and this is what it says to do. So the name, get name, sex, get sex. Alright? That's all it's going to be outputting, which is exactly what we see here. Name, Trevor Page, blah, blah, blah. So we need to perhaps create another toString that is more specific to the employee. Because if you look here, we have employee information, job title, organization. Okay, those are properties that belong to employee. So the dead giveaway here is that we should be overriding the toString method. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, I just type in string, whatever, control space is your friend, and you'll see that it says, oh, override method in person. So if I double click on this, there we go. I've just done an override on the toString method. Now, this doesn't really help me. If I just run this test, the first test, I still get the exact same result. Why is that? Well, because all this is doing is it's just invoking the parent class, the superclass's toString method. So if I hit F3, it's just going here and running the same method. I don't want that to happen necessarily. I want to have more information. I want to include job title and organization. So how do I do that? Well, I'm just going to create a string message, okay? And I'm actually going to invoke the super toString method, okay? Now, what that's going to do is it's going to return, see the toString, if I hover over it, it returns a string, okay? And the string that it returns is going to be name and sex, okay, with a new line character. Now, we are expecting the name and the sex and a new line character, but we're also expecting job title and organization. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel and type all that information out again. I'm just going to invoke the super methods super classes toString method, and I'm going to get all that first information. Now all I need to do is append to it the information that it's expecting, which is job title and organization. So let's do that. Let's type in job title. Okay, make sure you match the case. Okay, job capital, T is capital, because I think in my test I didn't say it's just an equals. It's not a I'm not sure if the case matters. I'll test that in a second. So job title, and there is a space after the colon, so that is important. Space is important. And then I need to return the job title. Well, how do I do that? Well, in the toString, all it did was invoke the get name when it wanted name and get sex when it wanted sex. So I should perhaps just invoke the get job title, and I can. Fantastic. So then I will append comma space organization colon space, and then append the organization name, which I'm hoping I can just say get organization, and I can. There we go. So, and then I assign that to the variable message, and then I return message. If you wanted to, you could just say return all this stuff to make it one line, or you could instantiate a new variable. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It's at the speed of computing these days, this is just inconsequential. It's not really that big a deal to create a variable and then use it. Yeah, so for the sake of being clear, I will just do it that way. So now let's run this unit test again. Right click and run. So it's still not happy. What's going on? Expected is name, Trevor Page, sex male, new line, job title. Ah, interesting. Look what we have here. It was expecting organization Google, but it got organization net, Java tutorials, assignment 2, structure, Google, blah, blah, blah. Like weird stuff. Why is that? Well, let's look at what get organization does. Oops, not 3. I want F3. What does get organization do? It returns the organization. And what happens when we have, where was I just looking? What happens, was I an employee? Yes, thank you. What happens when I invoke get organization and I append it with a plus character? Well, this is kind of, there's a lot going on here if you're not familiar with it. When you're using the plus sign, you are doing something called string concatenation. Okay, you're mashing strings together into a bigger string. Okay, and when I have something like get organization, and it returns an organization, what happens by default is something called, it's sort of like auto boxing. It's casting the organization object into a way that this will make sense. Okay. So it's actually not putting an organization here. It will actually get a string representation of the organization and append it into our message. Okay? So what does it do? How does it get a string representation? Okay? It does that by invoking the toString method. Okay? Which is funny because we're working on the toString method right now. But we're working on a toString for the employee class. This is the organization class. So this will return the toString of the organization. Well, all that does then is that if you don't override the toString method, it just gives you the, the memory location of the object, which is, of course, absolutely useless to us as human beings. This means nothing to us. Google means something, but net, Java tutorials, blah, 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 means nothing. So how do we resolve this problem? Well, we need to override the toString class. Okay, this is where inheritance and object-oriented programming, it all comes together into this wonderful new world of excitement and glory, right? Right. So, toString. Sorry, I goofed there. All right. We need to override the toString method. So, what happens when we do the toString? Well, again, we're doing the super class's toString method. What's the super class's toString method, you say? Well, let's take a look. Look at that. It goes to the object class. And the object class, you see it gets the class's name plus an @ symbol plus the hex string representation of the hash code. It's a lot of Greek if you're not familiar with how all this stuff works. Now you can read exactly what it's all about here. This is all code done by Java. The Java people wrote out this nice documentation for us. But that's not helpful. So I don't want to invoke the super class's toString. I want to have my own toString. And what do I want it to do? Well, I just want it to return, apparently, Google. Okay? Now, I can do that, or perhaps a more appropriate thing to do is to say, get the name of the organization. Okay? So, because I know that I'm just going to be hard coding Google in here, and I know that the name of the organization is going to be Google, maybe it makes a lot of sense to do that, to point it to the name of the organization. Okay, so let's try that, and then let's run our test, and look at that. We get a green bar. Everything is great, dandy, and happy. Now, remember, everything we do for Google, we should probably do for Microsoft. So let's grab this and paste it into our Microsoft class. And you see, because I didn't hard code anything, because I didn't hard code the term Google, okay, into the previous one, I can copy paste, and this will work because it's going to get the name of this organization, which will be, passed into the constructor of the Microsoft class as being Microsoft, and this will then return the name of the organization as being Microsoft and not Google. All right, fantastic stuff. This is object-oriented. This is polymorphism. This is inheritance. This is all and also encapsulation. Everything about object-oriented programming lies in these fundamental concepts. Okay, encapsulation, polymorphism, and inheritance. Okay, you've seen inheritance. This is essentially polymorphism. It's the output is changing dynamically based on runtime scenarios, because instead of going to the object toString method, we're now overriding it and saying, no, if we have a Microsoft object, you should invoke the toString of the Microsoft object and get the name of the organization, as opposed to the object representation of toString, which is the @ symbol and the hex code and all that stuff that you saw before. So it's fairly elegant and complex, but the more and more you use it, the more comfortable you're going to become, or you're going to get with it, okay? And it just becomes second nature. Second nature. So, we're happy, but that's just the one test case there. You see run 1 of 1. I have 2 test cases here, so let me right-click on the test class and run both tests. Now, the first one's passing, but the second one is failing. So, all right, why is the second one failing? Well, ensure that the equals method is properly coded. Okay, so employee get 0 equals employee get 2 should be true. Okay, I'm asserting that that is true. So, what do we know about employees again? Well, we know it's a list. What do we know about employees? What do we know about lists? Get 0 returns the first element. Get 2 returns the third element. Okay, it's a 0-based index. So we're comparing the first and the third employees together, and apparently they should equal each other. So what is the first and the third employee? Well, you look at the adds. Add, this is the first, This is the second. This is the third. So it's saying that this person should be equal to this person. Why is that? Well, name, Trevor Page, male, blah, 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 blah. We've already seen that. Take a look at this one. Name, Trevor Page, male. The birthday is going to be set from the calendar, which is only set once to the January 1st, 1983. So that'll be identical. Same job title, same organization. Okay, so yes, these are indeed the exact same person. So why is it that when we say get 0 dot equals get 2, it's saying it's not working? This is returning false. Why? These two are equal to each other, right? We see that. We see that they're exactly the same stuff. Well, the reason for that is when the default implementation of the equals method, okay, checks the actual objects in memory. All right, so perhaps a neat little trick that we can do here is to say, let's do a system.out.println, and let's say employee, let's say employees at the 0 index, and let's do employees.get 0 dot, well, I would say toString, but I don't need to say toString, because when I do this appending to a string, it'll automatically invoke the toString method. Now, what else do I want to do? And I want to do employees at the second location, and I want to say employees.get 2. All right, and again, that will invoke the toString method. So let me run this and see what the output is. Okay, let me go to the console. How come that didn't actually come out? Okay, so I see what's going on here. See, this is why I do these assignments, because I haven't yet gone through all this stuff, and at least not in weeks, and I'm going through it now, and you're seeing the actual mindset that I go through whenever I'm doing code. Okay, this is me in my element doing my coding thing. Okay, you're going to hit something which you didn't expect or didn't plan for, and you need to just fix it up. I was trying to show you the difference between these two employees, and show you that they're actually two different objects in memory. And I was trying to do that by getting by invoking the toString method. Okay, now we've already overridden the toString method for the employees to output exactly what we want, which is the name and job title and all that stuff. So when I look at it this way, when I do it this way, it's not helping. It's not helping to differentiate from the two, because they look exactly the same. So I need to take a different approach. Now, there's two things I can do. One, I could remove the toString method to show you what I mean, and I might have to do that because I don't think I can actually show you well, maybe I can show you this, the hash code. I don't know. Let's try that out. Let's try it out and see what it shows us, and to see if it represents what it is that I'm trying to explain. Okay, good enough. So the hash code for the objects that we're dealing with, I believe, is what was used before when you look at the object. Trying to get to the object here, and take a look at the toString. Okay. So I see, it does an integer to, so let me just replicate that exactly. So let me do that. So yes, this will work. I've never actually done this before, but hey, why not start now? And do that. And do that. Okay, so don't worry about what I'm doing here. If you don't understand it, that's fine. Because like I said, this is the first time I've done this. The point I'm trying to drive home here is that these two employees, although they look the same on the surface, they have the same name, they have the same job title, the same sex, the same birthday, the same organization. Everything on the surface is exactly the same. But there's one fundamental thing that's different between them. They both represent different objects in memory, okay? So if you look at employee 0, this is the location, the hash code, if you will, of the object, okay, in memory, as well as this one. And you see that they're not the same thing. And because they're not the same thing, because they're two unique objects, okay, when we invoke the equals method, it checks that. That's what the equals method checks. Does this number equal this number? And the answer is no, they don't equal each other. So this this condition, if employee 0 equals employee 2, will be false because they're not the same object. But this code that I've written here, it wants it to be true. So how do we do that? How do we say that if these two employees are two different objects, how do we say that they are the same person or the same object? Okay, and that is again all about inheritance and polymorphism. Okay, we need to override the equals method. We need to change it because right now the equals method is going off of the object's toString method. Not toString, sorry, my bad. Equals method. This one. It is checking to see if these two objects are equal to each other. Okay, and there's again more explanation as to how the thing actually works. If you want to, if you're interested in learning and reading specifically about it, go right ahead. I want to change that, so I can actually change that behavior. Let me delete this system outline, and I can change that behavior by overriding the equals method. So let's override the equals method for the employee. Okay, and it's the same way that I overrode the toString method. You just type in, equals, and double click on it or press enter. There you go. So same thing's going on. I can either implement the superclasses equals method, which will be the object classes equal method, or I could declare my own. And I want to declare my own. Now, here's a tip for all of you people out there in coding land. I could do this manually, or I could have my Spring Source Tool Suite do it for me, or my Eclipse, or my NetBeans, or whatever. I can right-click and go to Source and say generate equals method. Okay. Now you see that it says generate hashcode and equals method. Now that is the case because whenever you override the equals method, you also want to override the hashcode method. Why? Well, it has something to do with collections and determining equality between collections and blah blah blah. I don't want to get into that right now because it's quite a long conversation. Let me just tell you that you need to actually override both if you want to have code that will work perfectly. So I click on override, and it says select the fields to include in the hashcode and equals method. So this is saying what are the properties that I am going to be comparing against to determine equality. Okay, so here's an example. If I just have name, is that enough? If I have, I'm just comparing names. So if I have one person named Trevor Page, and I have a second person named Trevor Page, does that mean for sure that those two people are exactly the same person? No, because I know for a fact there are many Trevor Pages on planet Earth. Okay, I've talked to some of them. It's kind of fun. No, that's not enough. Can we say that? Okay, let's put in the birthday. Okay, is that enough? Well, actually, no, I don't believe that's enough either, because there can be two Trevor Pages born on the same day. Okay, it's not very likely, but it can happen. So let's flip back to our assignment here. What did I say that equality was all about? So I said if you compare two people with the same name, sex, birthday, and organization, the system should think that they are equal to one another. Name, sex, birthday, organization. Those were the requirements that were given to you, so let's follow those. Name, sex, birthday, organization. Name, sex, birthday, organization. There we go. So we don't include job title, fair enough. So if we say OK, it's saying, it's giving us a good some good warnings here. It's saying the superclass person does not declare the equals and hash code, which may result in your code not working correctly. Well, let's say OK, and you see it creates a whole bunch of code for us, and I don't want to go over it, but this is what you need to properly determine if two employees are actually equal to each other or not. So perhaps our code will work now. Let's give it a test run. Let's run this test. It's still not working. Well, the reason for this may not be obvious, but it lies in what we just saw with the warning message. Okay? And that is because when we included the organization, okay, as being part of this way of determining if two employees are equal to each other. So what is happening here is it's looking at, let's say, two Trevor Pages. Remember employee 0 and employee 2. Two Trevor Pages that have the same birthday, same name, same everything, and same organization. Okay, one, and I think it was this one, 0, 1, 2. No, this one. The problem is it gets caught up here, and you don't see that, but I know that that's what's happening. It gets caught up with the organization, and it tries to determine if this Trevor Page's organization is the same as this Trevor Page's organization, and it actually returns false. And it returns false for the exact same reason as it returned false before we overrode the equals method for the employee. All right. When you try to check the equality between this organization and that organization, it's looking at the hash code again. It's not looking at something else. It's looking at the hash code. And you see that we've instantiated two different Google objects. So since we've instantiated two different Google objects, we get two different objects in memory. Okay, therefore two different hash codes. So when it does the equals method, comparing these two, it returns false. And if one of them returns false, the entire thing is false. Okay, every field that we indicated has to be equal. Remember, we said birthday, name, organization, and sex need to be the same for it to return true. Okay, because this equals method returns a Boolean, true or false. So, what does that mean? All that means is that we need to go to organization, and we need to implement an equals method. Okay, so same goes for, just like we did for Google and toString, we do for Google and equals. All right, now we can do it this way manually, like I said, or my more favorite thing to do is to go to source, generate hash code and equals, and let's just say the name of the organization is enough. We don't really need to have number of employees. So there we go. It generates our code for us. And of course, everything we do for Google, we should do for Microsoft. So let me generate getter and setter, hash code and equals, just for name. And save. Okay. Geez, that's a lot of talking. Now let's run it. Boom. Now we are happy. Okay. So this assignment, now let me actually run everything just to make sure that both run together correctly. There we go. This assignment was designed to teach you about the importance of inheritance, polymorphism, and more specifically, the difference between the extends and implements, so a regular class or abstract class and an interface, and the importance of the toString and equals methods, and that you can actually override those methods to have them do whatever it is that you want to do. If you don't override the method, and it's a regular old Java object, you're going to be using the toString from the object type, which you saw the toString for the object type. What that does is it returns the hash code representation of the class. Okay, or we can override the toString and have it do whatever it is that we want to do. Okay, or the object, if you have the equals method, if you don't override it, it does this, which verifies that the two objects are exactly equal to each other, that they're the same object in memory, or we can override it ourselves and have it do whatever we want to do, which is compare the birthday, name, organization, and sex. Okay? So we can modify our code to do whatever it is that we want it to do with these objects. Okay? And I'm showing you these things because they are common. Okay? It's common to override the equals method, and if you override the equals method, always override hashcode. It goes without saying. That's a rule that you should follow, because if you don't do that, then again your collections could get all messed up, and I'm sure other things. I don't want to talk about them right now. The toString being overridden is not as frequent as the equals and hashcode, but it definitely happens, and it's definitely something that I've had to do. So I definitely wanted to show you exactly how to do that, so that you would be aware of it in the future. So those are the lessons that you should take from this assignment. And hopefully I've kept you, to the end of this video, and you've learned a lot, and you are very excited to go on and do the next assignment, assignment 3, which is all about, well, I don't want to tell you what it's all about because I don't want to ruin the surprise. So, thank you very much for joining. Hopefully this has been very informative, and happy learning.